Hi folks, this is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report. I want to tell you about the only day I've done this year, but the Oswegatchie River flows into the St. Lawrence in Ogdensburg, and there's a section of that river where the town has made a walkway for people, and there's places where people can stand on the bank and cast out and fish for whatever comes up that river. Well, what does come up that river? Just about anything from the St. Lawrence River this time of the year. That's why there's a period of time where you can't even fish in this section because they're trying to protect the walleyes that come up to spawn. Well, I came over there to fish for walleyes. I thought, well, this will be interesting to see if the fish are still in here, because I had talked to Mike Bean a few days before, and he and his wife had been catching a lot of walleyes in this part of the river, only they have a boat and they're trolling. So I go along the river and I start casting. And I got to tell you, it's impossible right now, this time of the year, to fish for northern pike, walleye, anything in the waters like this without catching bass, because the bass come up this river too. And this is the time they come up to spawn. The big ones come up. And you can't cast out and fish for something else without catching a bass, even though we know it's illegal. So I put on what I thought the walleyes would hit, and I put on a bucktail jig in pink and yellow. And I know that sounds, what do they eat that's pink and yellow? Well, I don't know, but they tend to react to that color. And it wasn't long before I'm hooking some really big smallmouth bass. So then I tried something different that I thought, I hadn't caught a walleye. And I thought, well, let's try something that looks more like a leech, that looks like something maybe they'd be feeding on when they're up there. And so I put on a long 4-inch thin, like minnow-tailed thing, like a drop shot bait, started casting that out. I wasn't getting the bass to hit now, but I also wasn't getting the walleye to hit. So what I think was happening, and I don't know, I'm just one fisherman there, but I didn't see anyone along the bank really catching anything. So maybe the walleyes had finally started to move back out into the river. But the other thing that I found really interesting, and this is sort of the lesson of all lessons to tell you right now, is there was two guys in a boat, and they kept coming back up. They'd anchor in an area not far from where I was trying to cast out, but they were farther out in the very center of the current that's going down through there. And this one guy, I don't know what he was using, but he was catching fish after fish after fish. And there's two lessons here. Number one, he might have had a bait that those fish really loved. But number two, he was presenting that bait in the current where the fish were. They weren't along the edges of the current as much as they were right in the center of the current. And he caught fish after fish. And believe me, when you come someplace to try to catch fish and you're doing your very best, which I was, and I'm watching somebody else out maybe 40 or 50 feet from me casting out and catching 2 to 3 times as many fish as I was, it's a bit humiliating. You think, boy, I must not be as good a fisherman as I think, or I don't have this down to the science he does. But I think the science was, if you want to catch fish, you got to fish where they are. And those fish weren't spread out everywhere. They were in that section of the current. And I couldn't really fish the current the same, casting out into it. My bait would be swept down immediately and go in a no-fish zone, whereas his bait was constantly where the fish were. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report.